Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to build a tapering jig. This tapering jig is going to be useful for end table legs, haul table legs, any kind of leg that you want to introduce a consistent, repeatable taper on. So one of the things you need to consider is size, obviously. Most furniture legs are going to be about 2 by 2 max dimension. I've got some leg blanks I'm working with here that are going to be final dimension to 1 1/4 square. And then as far as length, end tables usually run from 20 to 24 inches tall. Haul tables might get up into 30, 32 inches. So depending on what size of material you're going to be working with, that'll dictate a little bit about how big you want to build this tapering jig. I'm going to make mine 30 inches. I'll need to cut 3 pieces. So 30 inches will give me a nice round number, and I can make that out of a single 1 by 4. So let's start making some cuts. Alright, so for my purposes, I know I'm going to be using a number 5 and a number 4. They're 2.5 inches wide. I want to have a little bit of leeway in there, so I'm going to make mine about 2 3/4 wide. If you've got a 4.5 or something like that, you might have to tweak these a little bit. But I'm going to rip these down to 2 3/4 for the base. And then for the side pieces, we already established that about 2 inches square is large as I wanted to go. So add in the 3/4 dimensions for the base, and you get 2 3/4. And you definitely want to have a little bit of lip, because that's what's going to give you a tracking. So we're going to make the sides 3 inches. So the base is going to be 2 3/4, and the sides are going to be ripped down to 3 inches. Alright, so the next step is pretty straightforward. We're just going to simply drill and screw this together in a nice U shape here. Okay, our final step in actually making the jig itself is going to be attaching a little stop at the end of the U-channel here. This just has to be a little bit proud of the bed here, so I just cut it to 1 inch, and that'll give me a 1/4 inch overhang. And there we have it, our completed tapering jig. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Alright, so obviously there's a little more to it, to actually putting it to use, and I'll demonstrate how we get to that right now. Alright, so the key to using this tapering jig is to create an accurate template to follow. So I've already got a piece of stock here ripped down to 1 1/4 by 1 1/4, as that's going to be the final square dimensions at the top of the legs. I've got the apron right here, I'm going to measure that, and it's about 3 1/4. So I'm going to come down 3 1/2 and make a mark there. That'll give me plenty of room to start my taper and make sure that the taper actually doesn't interfere with the end of the apron. Alright, so we've got our template made. One thing to be aware of when you're making this template, this is going to be the pattern for every leg afterwards. So we want to make sure it's perfectly square across the top here. If it's not square, we're going to have a twist, and every taper that we make with this template is going to have that twist in it. So any mistakes that you make on this are going to be replicated to your final piece. So it's worthwhile to take a bit of extra time and make sure you get this template dead on. Now the next step is going to be ripping this template in half. Alright, so now we're going to actually see how this tapering jig works. We've split the template down in two, and I've just added some double-side sticky tape to mine. You could always screw this down or attach it however you want, really. But each half is going to be carefully placed into the U-channel here. Make sure it's flat, seated, and seated against the wall. And now we've got a template for our plane to run down. So now it's a matter of putting our leg blank in here and simply planing it down and getting the taper. The rails will stop the plane from going down too deep. It's kind of like the concept of a shooting board. Basically, these outside edges of the plane will ride on the template, and you know, if you have your cutting edge protruding too much, it may cut a small sliver out of it, and your taper may actually be slightly smaller than the template. As long as you're consistent, and usually on that final pass, just make sure you don't go down too low, and you'll have easily repeatable exact copies of your taper. Now a little bit about preparing the leg blank. You're going to want to have, I have this corner here marked as the outside edge, and every time I put this down, one of these faces has to be on the bed of the jig. So what that'll do is that'll allow me to create a leg that has two straight up and down outside faces, and then the opposing faces on the inside will be tapered. So I'll take this and I'll put one of the outside edges down, and we'll go to town and see what happens. All right, a lot of elbow grease, and we've got one taper cut. Now we just need, remember our bottom face here, turn that around and we'll cut the other taper. Not gonna lie, that's a lot of elbow grease, but now we have our perfectly tapered leg in 2 dimensions. There's the outside faces. You can see a taper on this side and a taper on this side. There we go. Now only 3 more of these to go and I'll have this end table done.